Imagine you're standing on the deck of a small research vessel drifting in the middle of the Black Sea. The waves are almost black themselves, darker than ink. The air smells faintly of salt, old nets, and the quiet promise of something forgotten. You lean over the railing, peering into the shifting surface, wondering how much the sea is willing to give up tonight. Below you, nearly 100 feet down, lies a secret that has waited thousands of years to be noticed again. A city that once echoed with the footsteps of merchants, children, priests, and soldiers, now reduced to silent, skeletal outlines beneath the silt. If you'd been alive in its time, you might have strolled down avenues lined with marble colonnades. You might have bought figs from traders whose ships bobbed in a busy harbor. But time can be more merciless than any conqueror. When the sea came for this city, it swallowed everything. As your eyes adjust to the darkness below, you realize how little you truly know about the world you live on. Because this city isn't some legend told by sailors over cheap wine. It's real. It's down there. And tonight, we're going to visit it together. Take a slow breath and picture this. The Black Sea wasn't always this vast expanse. Thousands of years ago, it was a much smaller freshwater lake, surrounded by forests and plains. People settled on its shores, never suspecting the catastrophe waiting on the horizon. Some researchers call it the worst flood in human prehistory, a disaster so sudden, so violent, that it inspired myths of global deluge. Maybe you've heard a version yourself: Noah's Ark, Utnapishtim's boat, or the stories of ancient peoples scrambling up hillsides, watching their villages drown. In the mid-1990s, two oceanographers, William Ryan and Walter Pittman, proposed a theory that shook the academic world. They suggested that about 7,600 years ago, the rising Mediterranean Sea burst through the Bosporus Strait with unimaginable force. Imagine a wall of water roaring across the land. Think of entire towns consumed overnight. Families clutching each other as the earth disappeared under black waves. It was no slow rising tide, it was a cataclysm. And beneath those waves, the city were searching for vanished. As you stand there, waves rocking the ship beneath your feet, you can almost hear a whisper rising from below. It's not the wind. It's the memory of thousands of lives abruptly ended, the echo of laughter and tears locked away under centuries of silt. Your heart beats faster as the crew prepares to lower a remotely operated vehicle into the water. The winch whines, cables creak, and a metal frame studded with lights descends slowly out of sight. On the monitor, the camera flickers to life, grainy at first, then sharpening into clarity as it sinks deeper. Darkness gives way to shapes. Stone walls appear, crusted with barnacles. An archway slumps sideways, its keystone cracked but still holding. The outlines of streets, plazas, and houses emerge in the glow of the floodlights, like ghosts remembering their former purpose. This is no natural rock formation. You're looking at architecture, human intention preserved by darkness. Some researchers believe this settlement could have been among the first to practice organized agriculture along the coast. Maybe even one of the earliest trading hubs that connected Europe to the rising civilizations of the Near East. If that's true, then this city was a vital artery of early culture, commerce, and invention. All of it erased in a matter of days. The RV hovers closer. You spot fragments of pottery, their painted patterns still faintly visible despite the millennia underwater. There's a collapsed staircase, a ring of stones that might have been a fire pit, a section of wall carved with symbols no one has fully translated yet. And in that moment, you feel something stirring, a shiver that starts in your spine and spreads through your chest, because you're witnessing a secret that almost no one alive has seen with their own eyes. How many stories were lost here? How many children's names? How many songs? How many dreams of the future? The water moves gently over the ruins, as if trying to soothe the memory of disaster. But the truth is, this place will never be at peace. It will always be a testament to how fragile human ambition can be when nature decides to remind us who's really in control. Some historians say that when the Black Sea rose, it expanded by more than 60,000 square miles. That's an area larger than many countries, swallowed so swiftly that entire cultures simply disappeared from history. And yet, in this darkness, the outlines remain, the bones of a city that refused to vanish entirely. Tonight, You're going to learn its story. But be warned, the deeper you go, the stranger it becomes. Because in this place, nothing is simple. Every answer uncovers another mystery, another question, another fragment that doesn't fit neatly into what you thought you knew. Take one last look at the monitor. Let your mind settle into the idea that beneath your feet is a lost world waiting to speak. Because in the next hour, you and I are going to descend deeper into older layers of ruins, into more unsettling legends, and finally, into the moment when the sea came to take everything. And when we surface, you may never look at the Black Sea the same way again. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you're standing where the ancient shoreline once met the land. Before the water rose, before disaster claimed everything, this place thrived in ways we're only beginning to understand. Try to picture the landscape, gentle hills rolling down to a freshwater lake shimmering under the early Neolithic sun, smoke rising in delicate threads from dozens of hearths, people moving between reed-roofed houses, carrying baskets of grain, clay pots, fishing nets. To them, this was the center of the world. Archaeologists believe these settlers were pioneers of their time. They farmed wheat and barley in tidy rows along the water's edge. They raised sheep and goats, their pens built from woven branches and mud. They fished the lake, bringing in carp and catfish, their catch drying in the breeze on wooden racks. But their accomplishments didn't stop with survival. They carved symbols into their pottery, zigzags, chevrons, swirling lines whose meanings have slipped beyond our grasp. Some think these were primitive attempts at writing, markers of ownership, or blessings for abundance. Others suspect they were messages only the initiated could read, part of rituals we can't reconstruct. The city's buildings were laid out in careful rows, suggesting a shared vision and cooperation on a scale almost unheard of in that era. Imagine the conversations around the firelight, debates over where to build a new house, who would tend the animals, which clan had the right to certain fishing spots. Every stone they shaped, every wall they raised, was an act of hope, a declaration that life here would endure. But the seeds of their undoing were already sprouting. Evidence suggests the climate was shifting. Seasonal rains grew unpredictable. Harvests sometimes failed, forcing these communities to rely more heavily on fish and wild plants. Yet none of them could have imagined that the greatest threat wouldn't come from the sky or the soil. It would come from the sea itself. Centuries before the flood, the Mediterranean was rising, creeping slowly toward the narrow channel that separated it from the Black Sea basin. Some researchers think the people here may have noticed subtle signs. Perhaps the rivers ran a little stronger in spring. Maybe the lake's level rose inch by inch, year by year, erasing beaches they'd known all their lives. If they worried, they left no written record, no warning carved in stone. Just these silent ruins, waiting for us to interpret them. Back on your ship, the RV glides over what might have been a marketplace. The camera captures a square framed by the remnants of walls. A flat area strewn with broken amphorae, shards of painted bowls, splinters of bone. Was this where traders arrived in long, narrow boats, their cargo packed in straw and sealed with wax? Did children chase each other between stalls, laughing while their mothers haggled over bundles of dried herbs? You can almost hear the noise, the voices, the rhythmic slap of waves against wooden hulls. One amphora fragment bears a design unlike any found elsewhere around the Black Sea, a looping pattern of interlocked circles. Some scholars argue it resembles decorations discovered thousands of miles away, in settlements near Mesopotamia. If that's true, this place wasn't just a local hub. It was part of a trade network that stretched across continents, a node in the web of early civilization. And when the flood came, it severed that connection in a single, unstoppable moment. Imagine the morning it began. 77,971. Perhaps they woke to a low, distant roar, a sound no one recognized. Maybe it sounded like thunder rolling across an endless sky. Maybe it sounded like the voice of the gods themselves. Some must have run to the shore to see. They would have witnessed a wall of water racing toward them, churning with uprooted trees, shattered boats, everything in its path. Panic spread faster than the waves. There would have been no time to save much. No chance to gather treasured possessions or herd animals to safety. The flood moved too quickly, too violently. Imagine the shock as the first homes were ripped from their foundations. The cries of families trying to flee uphill. The earth trembling beneath their feet. By the time it was over, the lake had become a sea. Entire settlements lay buried under a fresh, merciless tide. and above them, the world simply continued. In the centuries that followed, survivors and their descendants would return to the hills overlooking the new shoreline. Maybe they lit fires in remembrance. Maybe they told stories about the night the waters came, warning their children never to build too close to the waves. But as generations passed, memories faded. Myths replaced memories. And the city became a rumor, a place spoken of only in the language of legend. Yet here you are, staring at the evidence with your own eyes. This is the gift and the curse of discovery. It forces you to confront how much is lost every time nature decides to rewrite the map. How many other cities slumber beneath the seas of the world, waiting for someone to find them again? As the RV continues its search, the pilot marks the location of a collapsed doorway. Just beyond it, the sonar pings faintly against something large, something that doesn't match any of the known structures mapped in prior expeditions. You lean closer to the monitor, heart beating faster. Could it be an undiscovered chamber? A temple? A place where the people of this vanished city tried to make sense of their world, and perhaps even predict the disaster that would claim them? The pilot steadies the camera, edging toward the dark shape. In the next few minutes, you'll see what no one has seen in 7 millennia. And what waits in that darkness may change everything we think we know about the ancient Black Sea. The RV hovers at the threshold of that collapsed doorway. On your screen, the murky water looks almost black, stirred into drifting clouds by the submersible's thrusters. Every so often, a fish flickers past the camera like a ghost. You take a breath, though the air around you is warm and dry. It's a reflex you can't control, like your body knows you're standing on the edge of something ancient and fragile. The pilot eases the vehicle forward. Silt billows, then settles, revealing a broad stone lintel carved with a design you've never seen before. It's no accident that this place feels different from the rest of the ruins. The floor is paved with flat flagstones instead of packed earth. The walls rise higher, their blocks fitted so tightly that even after thousands of years underwater, you could almost imagine them still holding back the world above. A single column, toppled but largely intact, stretches across the threshold. On its base, the carvings continue, spirals enclosing smaller shapes that might be eyes, or seeds, or something stranger. This chamber wasn't just another storeroom or dwelling. It was important. Your mind spins through possibilities, a council hall where elders met to settle disputes, a place of worship where rituals unfolded by firelight, or maybe a library, its shelves lined with clay tablets that dissolved into nothing when the sea poured in. Whatever its purpose, this was a space meant to endure. The RV edges past the fallen column, slipping deeper into the darkness. Your heart beats faster as the floodlights flicker over something astonishing, an altar. It rises from the center of the chamber, square, waist-high, carved with the same spiraling motifs. Atop it sits a shallow stone basin, still perfectly level after 7,000 years. Inside the basin, silt has accumulated in layers, centuries of slow drifting sediment sealing away whatever was last placed here. And it's in this moment that you feel time collapse. Because though your technology is modern, your curiosity is not. Thousands of years ago, someone else stood here, their hands resting on this very altar. They believed in things you will never comprehend. They carried hopes and fears you can only guess at. And then, one day, they left, never to return. The pilot pauses, the ROV's manipulator arm poised over the basin. You nod to give the signal. Gently, the claw dips in and begins to sweep the silt aside. You lean forward, barely breathing. Millimeter by millimeter, the contents emerge. First comes the gleam of polished stone, an obsidian blade no longer than your palm, its edge still sharp enough to cut. Next, a tiny figurine carved from bone, its features worn smooth by centuries. A pair of drilled holes suggests it was worn as a pendant, an object of protection or devotion. And then something truly unexpected, a disc of clay, incised with concentric circles divided by evenly spaced radial lines. A fragment of a calendar? A record of astronomical observations? Or something simpler, a counting tool, a child's learning aid that somehow found its way into the heart of this sacred space? You may never know, but you do know this. In that instant, you have bridged an unthinkable gap. The waves that swallowed this city also preserved it. What was once catastrophe is now revelation. And as you watch the ROV cradle each artifact in its gentle grip, you feel a sense of kinship with the long-vanished hands that placed them here. Outside the chamber, the Black Sea is quiet. No wind disturbs the surface far above. No hint betrays the presence of your expedition. But here, in this hidden room, history has become tangible again. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine the chamber as it was before the flood, walls hung with woven mats, braziers flickering with pale blue flames, voices chanting words that no living person can pronounce. Someone kneels at the altar. They set down the obsidian blade with deliberate care. The figurine follows, nestled into a bed of soft moss. Finally, the clay disc is placed on top, turned until the markings align perfectly with some invisible reference. A final prayer, then darkness. When you open your eyes, the chamber is as you found it, silent, flooded, waiting. The pilot's voice crackles over the intercom, low and cautious. "There's a passage on the far side," he says. "Looks like it slopes down." Your pulse jumps. A lower level? If there is, it could be older than anything you've seen so far. An archive of memories even closer to the dawn of civilization. But as the ROV drifts closer, the silt thickens. Visibility drops to less than a meter. You bite your lip, weighing the risk. The chance of snagging the vehicle or damaging the site is real. But so is the chance of uncovering something that could redefine your understanding of this culture forever. Finally, you nod. "Proceed," you say. The pilot inches forward, one slow push of the thrusters at a time. On the monitors, the passage yawns wide. The walls here are less refined, rougher blocks stacked hastily, as if time or resources were running short. Your breath catches, because even in the swirling haze of sediment, you can see the silhouette of a staircase, descending into darkness so complete that it seems to swallow the ROV's lights. Somewhere down there is the next chapter of this city's story, and you are about to read it. The ROV hovers at the top of the submerged staircase, its floodlights probing the gloom. Part of you wishes you could descend in person, feel the ancient stones beneath your boots, touch the handrails smoothed by generations of long-forgotten lives. But you know the risks: collapse, entanglement, the weight of the sea itself pressing in from every side. So you settle for watching through the cameras, gripping the edge of the console as though you could somehow steady the vehicle with your hands. The pilot initiates a slow descent. Step by step, the ROV glides downward. The silt grows denser with each meter, curling upward in sluggish plumes. It clings to the lens in filmy streaks, smearing the outlines of the passage into a dreamlike haze. Occasionally, the floodlights catch a detail, a carved symbol, the curve of an arch, the remains of something once wooden and now reduced to soft decay. You can almost hear your heart in your ears. How many centuries passed while this staircase waited? How many storms churned overhead while the city below remained perfectly hidden? Halfway down, the ROV's manipulator arm brushes against a protruding beam. For one terrifying moment, you think the entire structure will give way. But the beam holds, and the vehicle eases past. Your lungs ache, though you remind yourself you're perfectly safe, breathing filtered air in a modern lab. At last, the stairs end in a wide, level floor. The ROV settles gently, silt curling around it in slow motion. It takes a moment for the cloud to drift aside, and when it does, you feel a jolt of recognition. Because you're not just looking at a lower chamber. You're looking at an older one, much older. The walls are built from larger stones, darker and less uniform. A style you've seen only in a handful of Neolithic sites scattered across southeastern Europe. If this level predates the upper structures, it could be older by millennia, perhaps even reaching back to the first waves of settlement. After the Ice Age, your voice is barely more than a whisper. Move forward. Slowly, the RV advances, each meter revealing more. Here, the carvings are simpler, no elaborate spirals or symbols. Just crude geometric lines hammered into the stone with tools older than writing itself. A zigzag band along the base of the wall, a line of circles above it, and, set into an alcove, a shape that chills you. A stylized figure, arms outstretched, head encircled by a radiating halo. Some kind of deity? Or a protective spirit invoked against the rising sea? Your mind scrambles for parallels. Catalhoyuk shrines, the goddess figurines of old Europe, the painted tombs of the Danube basin. But none are quite like this. The pilot steadies the vehicle. There's a doorway ahead, he says. You lean closer, squinting at the feed. It's little more than a dark slot between leaning slabs. The passage beyond is so narrow that the RV will have to retract its manipulator arms and crawl through sideways. Your throat is dry. No guarantees it will fit. No certainty it will come back. But you can't look away. Because in that darkness, you sense an answer waiting. An answer to the question that brought you here. Who were these people? And why did their city vanish beneath the Black Sea? You give the order. Take it in. Slowly, carefully, the RV begins to squeeze through. The walls are only centimeters from the camera lens. A single mistake, a sudden shift in the current, a fragment of stone breaking loose, and the vehicle could become trapped forever. But the pilot is steady, his voice calm over the intercom. Almost through. Then, suddenly, the walls open. You suck in a breath as the lights spill into a space far larger than you dared hope. A vast, circular chamber. At the center rises a dais, low and broad, encrusted with centuries of marine growth. Even in the dim video feed, you can see it was carved with obsessive care. Its outer edge is marked by shallow grooves that spiral inward in a labyrinthine path. The symbol repeats across cultures, the spiral as a sign of eternity, of rebirth, of the cycle of flood and renewal. Around the dais lie fragments, shattered pottery, half-buried implements, bones too large to belong to any small animal. The air in the lab feels suddenly cold, because you understand, without needing confirmation, that this was no ordinary chamber. It was a tomb, a place of burial and possibly of sacrifice. You glance at your colleagues. No one speaks. The only sounds are the whirring of the RV motors and your own heartbeat, loud in your ears. It feels as if you have slipped into the final memory of a civilization whose name you will never know. As the RV completes its slow arc around the dais, your gaze falls on one last object. A vessel, intact, its mouth sealed with a cap of black pitch. 7,000 years, and it still holds its secret. You clear your throat, your voice a rasp. Bring it closer. The pilot guides the RV forward until the camera fills with the image of the jar, its surface incised with the same radiating lines you saw upstairs. Whatever is inside, it was meant to endure. You swallow, because you realize you are standing on the brink of discovery and on the edge of a deeper mystery. One that will demand more questions, more dives, more nights spent sleepless, imagining the lives of the vanished. Above you, the Black Sea is calm. The modern world carries on, oblivious. But here, in this chamber beneath the silt, the story is waiting, and you are not ready to leave it behind. No one speaks as the RV steadies in front of the ancient jar. The silence is almost reverent, as though you're gathered around an altar instead of a robotic camera feed. Your mind races with possibilities, a funerary offering, a reliquary of bones, a sealed cache of grain or oil meant to nourish the dead on their journey to the afterlife. But in your gut, you sense something stranger, something the builders wanted no one to disturb. You exhale slowly. Let's document it first. The pilot activates the RV's high-resolution scanner. Blue lasers sweep the jar's surface, tracing every groove and crack in microscopic detail. The lines form a radial pattern that seems to pulse in the floodlights, an illusion, you tell yourself. A trick of the silt and shadows. Yet part of you wonders if the pattern was meant to do exactly this. Confuse the eye, stir the imagination, evoke something that words can't quite touch. You recall the first time you read about the Black Sea flood hypothesis, how rising meltwater from retreating glaciers might have swallowed entire coastlines in a matter of months. The thought had gripped you even then. What happens when a people realize their world is ending? When each tide comes higher, when fields vanish beneath the waves and the old gods stop answering prayers, would you spend your last days building a tomb, sealing away the objects that defined your life, hoping they would survive the deluge even if you did not? The pilot's voice crackles in your headset, startling you back to the present. Scan complete. Shall we attempt to retrieve it? The question hangs in the air. If the vessel crumbles in the manipulator's grip, the contents will vanish in a swirl of silt, and you will never know what secrets it held. But if you leave it behind, it could remain sealed another 7,000 years. Your decision is made almost before you realize it. Yes, you say, carefully. The manipulator arm extends, pincer tips trembling slightly as the pilot aligns them around the jar's midsection. Your breath catches. Any sudden movement, any pressure in the wrong place, and the artifact will become nothing but shards. A heartbeat passes. Another. Contact, the pilot murmurs. The pincer tightens, millimeter by millimeter, until the jar lifts free of the sediment with a small puff of silt. No cracking, no collapse. It dangles there, suspended in the blackness, delicate as a bird's egg. Your throat feels tight. Bring it out. The RV reverses, retreating through the narrow passage where it entered. The walls pass by in dizzying close-up. Carved stones, collapsed beams, layers of history pressed into the mud. When it emerges into the upper chamber, the mood among your team lifts almost at once. Even through the monitor, you sense the difference. You have carried something precious out of the dark. Back on the deck of the research vessel, the retrieval process feels agonizingly slow. The RV is winched upward meter by meter, the jar clutched in its steel fingers. You find yourself picturing the waves overhead, picturing the modern sea waiting to reclaim its offering. But finally, it breaches the surface, dripping salt water under the deck lights. Everyone crowds around as the technicians release the artifact into a padded cradle. The jar is no longer just an image on a monitor. It is real, solid, glistening with brine. Up close, the incised lines are clearer. You trace one spiraling groove with a gloved fingertip, feeling the weight of thousands of years pressing through the clay. What did the hands that shaped this vessel look like? Did the potter imagine this moment? The jar rising from the sea into the hands of strangers? You motion for the conservator. Let's skim the contents before we unseal it. The technician sets up a portable X-ray unit. You watch the screen as faint shadows emerge inside the jar. A central mass, dense and irregular, ringed by smaller shapes. Nothing immediately familiar. No simple pile of bones or shells. Your pulse quickens. What are we looking at? The conservator squints. Hard to say. Could be organic. Could be textile. Your mind leaps from one possibility to the next. A bundle of ritual offerings, a preserved votive figure, an artifact no one has ever seen. And something else nags at you. The radiating lines on the jar's exterior, the same motif you saw carved into the tomb walls. Over and over, a sunburst or a star, encircling the sealed mouth like a protective ward. You swallow. It feels, absurdly, like you are about to open a door that was never meant to be unlatched. But you know you have to. The conservator positions a thin scalpel along the line where the black pitch seal meets the rim. Ready? You nod. The blade presses into the hardened sealant, slicing slowly, precisely. A thin whiff of ancient resin drifts into the air, pungent and almost sweet. The moment stretches. A final flick of the blade. The seal pops free. You hold your breath as the conservator eases the lid away. For an instant, all you see is darkness inside the vessel. Then the beam of a penlight slices across the interior, illuminating the secret it has kept since the dawn of agriculture. Nestled within a cocoon of brittle plant fibers lies a cluster of small, dark spheres. Seeds. Your pulse hammers in your temples. Not bones, not charms, but seeds. Carefully, the conservator lifts one between tweezers, cradling it in the light. A shiver runs through you as you realize what you're seeing. The genetic legacy of a vanished culture. A chance to grow, literally, something from the lost city beneath the Black Sea. And perhaps, in their stubborn persistence, the seeds have one more message. Even after the flood, life finds a way to begin again. You exhale, feeling the tension drain from your shoulders. But you also know the mystery is far from over. Because the seeds are only the beginning. Ahead lies the question of what else the city still hides, and whether you have the courage to unearth it.in the days that follow. The seeds become the heart of your expedition. You watch as the conservators catalog each specimen under the microscope. Even magnified 100-fold, they look ordinary. Ovoid husks the color of old coffee grounds. Yet you feel a strange reverence, as though these seeds are tiny ambassadors sent across time. Their genetic signatures could rewrite what scholars believe about early agriculture on the Black Sea coast. What they cultivated, what they ate, how they survived, for a while, against the rising tide. When you finally step back from the lab tent, dawn is breaking across the sea. The horizon glows silver pink, waves lapping at the hull of your research vessel. A gull cries somewhere overhead, a living echo of the countless generations who once woke to this same dawn. You think again of the figure carved into the tomb wall, arms spread, halo blazing. What god or ancestor did it represent? What stories had been told in the darkness around that dais? Below deck, the pilot is prepping the ROV for another descent. You find him wiping salt spray from the camera housing, the same calm focus in his eyes. "Ready for round 2? He asks. You nod. "Today we explore deeper." He raises an eyebrow. "Deeper?" You gesture to the sonar scans tacked to the bulkhead, faint outlines suggesting corridors branching beyond the chamber you found. "It's a settlement," you say quietly. "Not just a shrine. They built rooms. Maybe storage areas. Maybe living quarters." The pilot studies the map. "You think there are more artifacts?" "I think there are more answers." He gives a low whistle. "Then let's go find them." An hour later, the RV slips back beneath the waves. You watch from the control station as the familiar staircase reappears, stones ghostly in the floodlights. The upper rooms lie just as you left them, hushed, undisturbed, silt swirling in slow drifts across the floor. You guide the vehicle past the dais, deeper into the central corridor. Here, the passage narrows. The walls close in, ancient masonry pressing in on every side. The pilot's voice crackles over the comms. "Careful, we've got a partial collapse ahead." You peer at the monitor. A mass of fallen stone and timbers chokes the corridor. Beyond, you glimpse emptiness, a chamber perhaps larger than any you've seen. "Can we get through?" The pilot angles the lights, studying the tangle. "I think so, if we go over the top." Your heart thuds against your ribs. The ROV could snag, or worse, dislodge something that brings the ceiling down. But you know you can't turn back. "Proceed," you say. Slowly, like a cautious insect, the RV climbs the slope of debris. Silt billows up in a blinding cloud. For a few seconds, you can see nothing, only murky gray turbulence. You hold your breath. Then the silt begins to settle, revealing a chamber unlike any before it. It is enormous, at least 20 meters across, with walls of the same cyclopean stone. Pillars rise from the floor, carved with spirals and rows of dots. Between them lie low platforms, each piled high with broken vessels and slabs of something dark and crumbling. You squint at the video feed. Is that charcoal? The pilot magnifies the image. You see it clearly, blackened layers, interspersed with ash. Fire pits, an entire complex dedicated to flame. A chill prickles your skin. Ritual burning? Feasting? Cremation? The answer lies in the objects scattered across the platforms, some recognizable as pottery, others no more than warped lumps fused by ancient heat. You circle the chamber slowly, drinking in every detail. Here is a stone basin, its rim carved with the same radiating lines. There, a heap of cracked bones, animal or human, you can't yet tell. And near the far wall, a raised shelf bearing 3 intact vessels, their sides polished to a sheen even after millennia underwater. You swallow, your voice low. Focus on those jars. The ROV eases closer. The jars are sealed like the first, each mouth capped in hardened pitch. But one of them is different, its surface incised with unfamiliar marks. A line of small vertical slashes, grouped in pairs. Your heart stutters. Not mere decoration. Notation. Some form of counting or proto-writing. Evidence of literacy, however rudimentary, in a culture previously believed illiterate. If confirmed, it would be a discovery to rival the earliest Sumerian tablets. The pilot glances back at you. You want to bring them up? You hesitate. Part of you yearns to recover them all. But the chamber is unstable. Every second the ROV remains increases the risk of collapse. We'll retrieve one, you decide. The marked vessel. The manipulator arm extends, delicate as a surgeon's hand. You hold your breath as the pincer settles around the jar. Millimeter by millimeter, it lifts free. No collapse. The pilot maneuvers the ROV back over the debris slope. This time, you feel the enormity of the moment even more keenly. You are carrying a message, maybe the first written message, out of the darkness. The ROV rises through the water column, each meter erasing 7,000 years of concealment. When it finally surfaces, you stand on deck, feeling the morning sun on your face. The jar is lowered into waiting arms, cradled like an infant. You step forward, gloved hands trembling, and trace the incised marks. 2 slashes. Pause. 2 more. Over and over. A code, a count, a record of something that mattered deeply enough to be immortalized in clay. For the first time, you feel you can almost hear the voices of the city's builders. Echoes in the saltwater gloom, whispering across the millennia. Remember us. And you know, without doubt, that you will. Back in the lab tent, the jar rests on a padded table, still damp with seawater. You can't take your eyes off those etched lines. It's a peculiar feeling, knowing you are likely the first person in thousands of years to try to understand them. You set up high-resolution photography under raking light to capture every groove and pit. The digital images reveal subtle details invisible to the naked eye. Faint cross-hatching along the base of each slash, as though the scribe had tested the blade before carving in earnest. Who was that person? A priest recording an offering? A potter signing their work? A child practicing marks that might become an alphabet? Your mind reels with possibilities. The conservator hovers nearby, gloved hands folded. Do you think it's writing? Not in the way we understand it. You murmur. More likely a tally or notation system. But even that changes everything. She nods, gently rotating the vessel to examine the seal. If the contents are preserved, we'll have comparative dating. You finish. Organic residue, maybe plant DNA. Your heart hammers as she prepares the micro-drill. The whine of the bit is shockingly loud against the hush of the morning. Carefully, she bores a narrow channel through the pitch. A trace of black, resinous dust falls onto the catch tray. Then the smell hits you. Musky, earthy, sour. Ancient contents. Carefully, she inserts a microendoscope, a slender, flexible tube tipped with a camera. You watch the monitor as the lens pushes past the seal into darkness. The first glimpse shows only clotted residue stuck to the jar's inner walls. She advances a little farther, and you see layers of seeds and what might be dried pulp. Grapes. The pilot leans in from the doorway. Wine. Probably, you say, voice husky. Or something like it. The conservator withdraws the scope, beaming. Fermented liquids in the Neolithic Black Sea. That alone is a landmark. But your mind is still on the tally marks. If this was a record of storage, how many jars were filled, perhaps? The person who made it was capturing information to be shared or remembered. Information stored in symbols. The dawn of literacy isn't a single moment. It's 1,000 quiet experiments like this. You feel the weight of it, pressing on your chest, a combination of awe and obligation. When you step outside, blinking in the cold morning air, the research vessel rocks gently under your boots. A flock of cormorants rises from the waves, black wings flashing. The horizon seems vaster than it did yesterday. You can't help but imagine how it looked to the city's inhabitants, blue and infinite, the same as it looks to you. But where you see beauty, they must have also seen threat. The sea was coming for them, inch by inch, and eventually it took everything. You spend the next hours cataloging every fragment brought up from the chamber. A second jar. A piece of carved bone, perhaps a pin or ornamental tool. A blackened disc that might be the lid of a ceremonial brazier. Each item is tagged, photographed, sealed in protective containers. Each tells part of a story too complex for any single artifact to explain. By early afternoon, the storm you've been warned about begins to build. The wind picks up, churning whitecaps across the surface. The pilot reluctantly calls a halt to further dives. You don't argue. Even as your bones ache to see the rest of the city, you know you can't risk the equipment or the lives of your team. Instead, you gather everyone in the lab tent. Under the buzzing LED lights, you review what you've learned. 3 main chambers mapped. Multiple storage vessels recovered. Signs of fire rituals. Potential proto-writing. Everyone seems both exhausted and electrified. It's almost like we've opened a door, the conservator murmurs. You nod. And now we can't close it. Someone asks what comes next. Analysis, you reply. Dating, cataloging, genetic testing, comparative linguistics. Years of work. The words taste both daunting and delicious on your tongue. Because in your heart, you already know you will never see the world the same way again. Later, as the storm lashes rain across the deck, you find a quiet corner to sit with your notes. You trace the tally marks over and over on your tablet screen, trying to make them speak. Could the pairs of lines indicate units? 2 amphorae of wine? 2 months of storage? Or something more symbolic? A ritual calendar, marking the time before the city was lost? You press your palm against the screen, wishing you could conjure the hand that carved them. The storm rages on, rocking the ship in its iron grip. In the darkness, you imagine the final days of that vanished city. The wind battering rooftops, water seeping into streets, families packing whatever they could carry, abandoning the place their ancestors had called home for centuries. The last fires guttering in those massive hearths. The final jar sealed and stacked among the ashes. Some part of you feels like you are standing beside them, 1 foot in the present, one in a time so distant it barely seems real. As dawn breaks again, gray and reluctant, you know you have only begun to understand what the city was and what it meant. But you also know that you will never stop trying, because some stories are too important to let slip back into silence. And the language of the lost, however fragmentary, deserves to be heard. By the time the storm finally calms, the sea is transformed again, flat, silver, deceptively serene. You stand on the deck as the dawn thickens into morning, breathing the salt air. Every plank of the ship is slick with rain. Inside the lab tent, the team is already stirring, fueled by strong coffee and quiet determination. Today is your last scheduled day on site before you have to return to the mainland. A final dive, a last chance to see more of the city that has haunted your every waking thought since the first sonar scan. The pilot is wary. Even though the waves have settled, the currents below remain unpredictable, but you can't leave with so many questions unanswered. So you agree to one short descent, 40 minutes, no more. The submersible drops again through the blue gloom. The city's outline emerges out of the haze, familiar now but no less extraordinary. You glide along the main thoroughfare, past the foundation walls, the step platform where you found the first hearth. At the far end of the site rises something you hadn't noticed before. A standing stone, nearly 3 meters tall, tilted at a precarious angle. At first glance, it looks like just another slab, but as the lights sweep over its face, you see the marks. Incisions running in vertical columns, rows upon rows of deliberate cuts. Your breath catches. You maneuver closer, angling the cameras. The columns are separated by etched borders. Within each section, the lines repeat in patterns too precise to be random. You feel your scalp prickle. This isn't tallying. This isn't decoration. It is writing. Your heart races so fast you can hardly hear the pilot's voice crackling in your headset. Control, are you seeing this? The radio bursts with excited chatter as the feed streams back to the surface. You trace the lines with the sub's manipulator arm, careful not to touch. Even underwater, you feel the gravity of it. A lost script. An entire language swallowed by the sea, waiting centuries for someone to read it again. You remember what it felt like to press your hand to the jar's faint marks. This is the same impulse, recording, remembering, refusing to let knowledge vanish. Somewhere, deep in your mind, a door creaks open. You picture the people of this city gathered around the stone. Priests chanting, elders teaching children what the symbols meant, scribes carving each stroke with absolute conviction that it mattered. It did. It still does. You take as many photographs as you can, recording every detail before the countdown clock forces you to ascend. As the submersible rises, you look back through the viewport one last time. The stone stands alone in the silt, a testament to a vanished civilization that refused to be erased. When you break the surface, the sky is blindingly bright. Your hands are trembling as you climb onto the deck. No one speaks for a moment. The whole team just stares at you, waiting, barely breathing. It's a script, you finally say. The conservator lets out a soft gasp. Then, We might be able to read it? Eventually, you reply, if we can find any related inscriptions on land, if we can match symbols to objects or numbers. It will take years, maybe decades, to translate even a single sentence. But the possibility is intoxicating. And in that moment, you realize this is why you came. Not for fame, not even for knowledge, but to stand here, salt crusting your skin, knowing you have heard the voice of a people long assumed lost. And you will spend the rest of your life trying to understand what they were saying. That afternoon, you help pack up the equipment. You label the crates of artifacts. You stow the cameras, the sonar units, the submersibles data drives. As the ship pulls away from the coordinates that have dominated your dreams, you stand at the rail, watching the sea close over the site again. It looks unchanged, calm, endless, unknowable. But you know better now. Beneath that silver skin lies an entire city. Families who loved and grieved. Builders who carved roads and pillars. Scribes who invented a language. And in their final days, they left a record carved in stone, proof that they existed, that they mattered, that they would not be forgotten. As the coastline of the mainland appears on the horizon, you find yourself smiling through tears. You think of all the other ruins waiting on the ocean floor, all the other stories waiting to be heard. Someday, you will return. Someday, you will descend again and spend another lifetime listening. For now, you turn away from the rail and step back into the lab tent. There is work to do. There are names to reclaim from silence. And there is a vanished city beneath the Black Sea that will never again be just a rumor. It is real. It is remembered. And its voice has finally returned.